All right, welcome back, crime fighters. Thank you for joining us for another edition of Calhoun County's Most Wanted, the program where you get to help make Calhoun County a better and safer place by helping us lock up some bad guys. By us, I mean him. I'm Chris Wright. This is your sheriff, Matthew Wade. Good to see you, Sheriff.
It's always good to be on the show, Chris.
All right, lots of work. I know you've been busy. I've been seeing lots of stuff going on. And
Calhoun County has no shortage of things to do. We have a great place to live and a lot of good things going on.
Mm-hmm. And you get involved in a lot of the good things as well as the necessary things.
Yeah, you know, some of the necessary things that's going on is November the 1st, this week, the new traffic laws take effect where if you're on the interstate and you're going for certain distance in the left-hand lane and you're not passing, you can get pulled over for that.
And you could have been pulled over already. We've had the laws in place, but with a warning period, is that right?
That's correct.
And the warning period ends at the end of October. So as of November 1st, if you get pulled over, you're probably getting a ticket.
Absolutely. Yeah, we had somebody that I know that got pulled over. Like, what am I getting pulled over for? And that was, they were in the left-hand lane, and they got a warning. But after, like you said, the end of October, it will go into full effect, and they can write you a ticket. Probably will.
So basically, it's encouraging everybody to stay in the right lane when you're on the interstate, and other roads as well if you've got multiple lanes. But for the law specifically, they talk about the interstate, you got to be in the right lane unless you're passing somebody. If you go more than 1.5 miles in the left-hand lane and you're not passing somebody,
they'll write you a ticket.
They're going to write you a ticket.
And it'll be expensive.
Mm-hmm. And then there's also a change in the seatbelt laws.
Yes, which I'm always been a big fan of this. Whether the government has to tell you to wear a seatbelt or not, you should wear it because it's for your own good. But up until now, just the front two occupants had to be belted in, or you could get a ticket. Now, every occupant in the vehicle has to be belted in, or you can get a ticket for that. And you know, to me, it's not about the ticket; it's more as it's about safety. Most people who die in a car crash die because they didn't have their seatbelt on. They get ejected or tossed around the inside of the vehicle, and I can't tell you how important it is to wear that safety belt.
Everybody in the vehicle has to be buckled in.
It has to be buckled in, and you should do it every trip, every time. Somebody out there loves you. Wear it for them, not because the government tells you to.
It's certainly no fun for law enforcement officers and other responders that come out there and have to respond to these accidents. Obviously, the first thing is we don't want people to be dying, but I don't want you and your deputies to have to go out there and deal with that either.
Yes, absolutely. You know, and as a father, you know, that's a non-negotiable with me and my children. You have to wear your seatbelt. If I catch you not wearing your seatbelt, you won't have a car to drive. Mm-hmm. You know, I want my babies to be alive, and I want them to arrive alive. So, you know, wearing the seatbelt's the best thing for you, whether the government tells you have to or not. But now, if you don't, you can get a ticket for it. And we'd rather you just wear it. So
there you go. All right, so a couple of changes going into effect this week. Well, let's say thank you to our viewers for the work that they've done here the last week.
You know, they've been busy this week. 7 arrests, brings the count up to 4,480 people put in jail, all because somebody was willing to help us. We cannot do it alone. Thank you for your help.
And of course, we've got a brand new lineup for you that we will start in just a few minutes when we come back. The first half of this week's lineup on Calhoun County's Most Wanted. All right, time to get down to business. Let's get started with the first half of this week's lineup on Calhoun County's Most Wanted. First up this week, we have Robin Warmack of Jacksonville, wanted on a failure to appear warrant for possession of a controlled substance and use and possession of drug paraphernalia. Stephanie Thompson of Piedmont, wanted on a failure to appear warrant for possession of a controlled substance. Tashiva Tippins of Anniston, wanted on a failure to appear warrant for negotiating with a non-negotiable instrument, aka passing bad checks. Morgan Thacker of Piedmont, wanted on a probation violation for possession of a controlled substance. Jeffrey Beal of Piedmont, wanted on a failure to appear warrant for possession of a controlled substance. Alan Nicholson of Piedmont, wanted on a failure to appear warrant for possession of marijuana, 2nd degree. Kiera Hartley of Talladega, wanted on a probation violation for possession of a controlled substance. That's the first half of this week's lineup. We'll have more for you here in just a few minutes. In the meantime, if you have any information, please give us a call. Calhoun County Crime Stoppers, 256-238-1414. All right, we will have the second half of this week's lineup coming up in just a few minutes. So if you didn't see anybody you recognize there, just hang tight and maybe you will in a few minutes. We'll also talk about some property crimes that we need your help with a little bit later on in the show. But right now, Sheriff, we want to talk about SORNA, and that's not somebody with an odd name.
That's right.
that we're looking for.
It's a very important part of the Sheriff's Office, and SORNA stands for Sex Offender Registration and Tracking Act, Notification Act, Sex Offender Registration Notification Act, and we actually have 2 investigators that do nothing but register sex offenders and comply with that law, and we also go and do follow-ups and checks at their home, and if they're outside of that Registration and Notification Act, we arrest them, and we do that. 2 guys do that,
Sad that
all the
it's
time.
necessary to have 2 people doing that in a county the size of Calhoun, but Stan Chervinsky is one of those investigators. Stan, we appreciate you being on the show with us.
I'm pleased to be here.
And we're lucky to have Stan. He's actually retired with us. He was a sergeant, retired, and after he retired, he come back and he's doing this. So we're lucky to have him.
All right, so tell us a little bit about the act itself and what that all entails.
Once a person is convicted of a sex offense in Alabama, they're required to come to our office and register. At that time, we take all their personal information, find out where they live, if they intend to work or go to school, if they intend to operate any type of motor vehicles or any kind of aircraft or watercraft. They're required to give us that information. And then we in turn take that information, we follow up to make sure that it is accurate.
Of course, there are reasons for this. Our community needs to know about certain individuals so that we can prepare ourselves and make smart decisions about how we go about our daily lives. And so it's important that these folks do what they're supposed to do to get registered and continue to update information as it changes.
That is correct. And the most important part of this registration process is to make sure that with that continuous interaction with law enforcement, that will enhance these offenders to maybe think twice before they reoffend again. Because they know we're going to be there watching them, we're going to be checking on them, and we want to make sure that they're doing the right things.
Let's talk just a second about what's included under that sex offender umbrella, because there is a difference. Not all crimes are equal. All crimes are illegal. And everybody that fits under that umbrella is there for a reason, but that doesn't necessarily mean that they're all the same, does it?
No, there's a wide variety of criminal offenses. Some are misdemeanor offenses such as sexual misconduct, indecent exposure, all the way up to the worst of the worst, where we have the rape cases and serious sexual offenses against children.
Every sex offender that has to register with us, the notice goes out within 2,000 feet of their address or where they're living, so those people get notified. And whenever that happens, it's always a flood of concern. But on that list, on that notification they get, has a picture of the subject, who he is, where he lives, and what he's been charged with. And so there is a description. A lot of times it'll say if it's a victim under the age of 12 or a 15-year-old, or if it's indecent exposure. So it gives a little bit of description to those people that are living close to them. But it doesn't prevent crimes from happening, but it can inform you to not be a victim if you know it's there.
It can potentially prevent future crimes.
It can prevent future crimes.
And you say when they're charged, do they have to do this after being charged, or is it after a conviction?
After a conviction.
Okay. So it'll show you on there. Is there a difference in what the criminal's responsibility is? Is there a difference based on what crime they were convicted of within that umbrella there, or is it basically they have the same responsibilities regardless?
The law is very comprehensive, and it's very difficult to weed through, and there's a lot of times we have to call and get clarification from the state, but there are different levels somewhat. Sometimes, depending on what you've done, you may or may not be able to live with children in the home. Even your own children might not be able to live with you. So there is a little bit of differences there, and there's some crimes where kids can live with you in the home. It just depends on your offense and what the law says.
Of course, these folks, they've been convicted of a crime. They're not somebody that we can count on to always do what they're supposed to do.
That's right.
If we see somebody that we believe is a convicted sex offender, and we think they may not have followed this procedure, they may not be in compliance, what should we do?
contact the sheriff's office immediately. There's always going to be a way that we can be contacted 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. So if anybody notices something that appears improper, just call us. Let us check it out, see if it's something that we need to look further into. But don't hesitate. I know a lot of people will call and say, well, we didn't want to bother you because we weren't sure, but we'd like to know as soon as possible.
All right. We need to take a quick break, but we're here at Halloween time. That's a busy time for you,
Yes,
I know.
sir.
So
Yes, sir.
we want to talk about that, some Halloween safety. When we come back, we'll also have the second half of this week's lineup on Calhoun County's Most Wanted. All right, let's get started with the second half of this week's lineup on Calhoun County's Most Wanted. Allison Whaley of Anniston wanted on bond revocation for theft of property, second degree. Ronald Hughes of Anniston wanted on a failure to appear warrant for attempting to elude and use and possession of drug paraphernalia. Christopher Walker of Anniston wanted on a failure to appear warrant for possession of marijuana, second degree. Austin Johnson of East Aboga wanted for a probation violation, driving under the influence and theft of property, first degree. Michael Rowland of Gadsden wanted on a failure to appear warrant for use and possession of drug paraphernalia. Sige Abera of Russellville wanted on a probation violation for certain persons forbidden to possess a pistol. Jennifer Wisnat of Gadsden wanted on a failure to appear warrant for possession of a controlled substance and obstructing justice using a false ID. Do you have any information about where we can locate any of these individuals? If so, please call Calhoun County Crime Stoppers at 256-238-1414. We want your information, not your name, and you could get a cash reward of up to $1,000. All right. If you have any information, please let us know, and we will have our Crime Stopper segment of the show in just a few minutes. But right now, we're talking with Stan Chervinsky, SORNA investigator with the Calhoun County Sheriff's Office, and talking about sex offenders and how they're supposed to act and not act, and what we're supposed to know about them within our community. And Sheriff, with Halloween here, a lot of folks are very interested in that information.
Absolutely. You know, sex offenders shouldn't be trick-or-treating. You know, if you're going to be trick-or-treating, you should look at the LEA website. We have a website that also has sex offenders on it. We're updating that now. But plan your route. Know where you're going. Look and see. Sex offenders aren't always in the house that looks like sex offenders live in. Mm-hmm. You know, you just need to inform yourself of where you're going. Never turn your back. We can see in the recent events in Birmingham, it just takes a split second for somebody to grab your child. And, you know, God forbid that ever happen to anybody ever again. That's just a horrible thing. And but evil people do exist, and we have to do our part to protect our children, especially at Halloween.
Stan, what are you doing here leading up to Halloween to get prepared?
Well, the thing is, it's an exciting time for the children, and of course, you know, they're wanting to wear their costumes and get out there and get some candy and trick or treat and everything. But safety is imperative. They're going to have to make sure that the parents make sure your children are in costumes that are bright, reflective. They have stickers on them, reflective lights, flashlights. And stay together as a group. Stay close to your parents, stay close to your friends. Be careful when you're going up to get, you know, somebody's door and trick or treat and stuff like that. And just make sure that you're paying attention to everything around you, the people around you, what's going on. One of our concerns is the traffic in areas, because the children are excited about going up and knocking on the door and everything. They're not necessarily paying attention to traffic in the area and running across streets and things like that. So just, it's a time to be very vigilant, you know, keep a close eye on your children and trick-or-treat in groups, you know, and stay safe.
Never go inside somebody's home. You're trick-or-treating and they ask you to come inside, you know, for a second. Don't never go in somebody's home.
If it's Meemaw's house, fine.
That's fine.
Yeah.
But stranger's house, don't go in it, you know.
And encourage your children not to start eating that candy and stuff. They can go home and take a close look at it, inspect the candy, make sure that the candy that's in store wrappers and stuff like that's probably pretty good. If somebody's wrapping up popcorn balls or something like that, make sure you kind of check that stuff out to make sure that they're getting safe candy.
And we don't want to overly concern people, because this isn't something that happens often.
No,
you know,
no.
Generally speaking, people are not out to get the kids on Halloween.
That's correct.
But at the same time, you just want to use a little common sense, a little effort, just to make sure.
Supervise your kids, make sure they're reflective, well lit, stay together as a group, don't let them run off ahead of you. We have had a child hit with a car a couple of years ago at Halloween. You know, you just want to make sure that there's nothing that beats good old-fashioned parenting.
Right. Yeah. I'm going to make a confession. Several years ago, I was headed to a Halloween party, and I'm driving through the neighborhood faster than I should have been, just as those kids are starting to get out. And I was driving a convertible at the time. Some mom just yelled at me, and she gave me the tongue lashing I deserved. And I have been much more careful ever since then. And before then, I don't know what came over me that night. I was excited, but
it can happen to anybody. It doesn't make you a bad person, you know. For instance, we're confessing, I had a neighbor get on to me about a year ago. I was just going through the neighborhood. I just wasn't paying attention. He goes, "Hey, slow down." I said, "You're right," you know. And it can happen to anybody. That's the reason why we're reminding people today is to think about it. So
yeah, because it can be and should be a wonderful festive time. Weather may not be helping to make that so this year, but Stan, we do appreciate your work out there.
Sir.
I know it's not the most fun job, is it?
It's challenging. It sure is. Now, the majority of the offenders that register with us do what they're supposed to do. But we have our percentage that we have to constantly remind them, you know, to do what they're supposed to be doing. And that's what we do. We're out there watching for them.
All right, well, thank you for doing that.
Yes, sir.
All right. We will take a quick break. When we come back, we will have the Crime Stopper segment of the show, talk about a couple of property crimes that maybe you can help us solve. And we'll also have our Crazy Criminal of the Week on Calhoun County's Most Wanted. All right, let's see if you can help us out with a couple of property crimes recently committed here in Calhoun County. On October 20th, a home located on Weatherbrook Lane was burglarized. A patio door was damaged. Between October 18th and October 21st, a green 1996 GMC Sierra was stolen from a business on Highway 21 South in Oxford. Armstrong Construction is on the sides of the truck. If you have any information about these crimes or any other crimes committed in Calhoun County, if so, please contact Calhoun County Crime Stoppers at 256-238-1414.
Stupid! You're so stupid!
All right, Sheriff, I know that you have interactions with individuals for lots of different reasons, and a lot of things happen in those interactions. You ever have something where somebody just says something that tells you, you know what, we need to look into this individual a little bit more closely?
all the time.
All right. One individual here that got pulled over, and the deputy that was talking to him, he told the deputy that he was hanging out with Yogi Bear.
Hey, boo-boo.
Now, this sharp deputy was aware that he said he was hanging out with Yogi Bear at Yellowstone National Park. And this deputy, no, Yogi lives at Jellystone National Park.
That
So,
sharp guy, sharp
so
deputy.
he knew we need to investigate a little bit closer. And sure enough, inside the gentleman's vehicle, they found 8 pounds of meth.
That could explain why he thought he was Yogi Bear. Was he
He
still in
didn't
picnic?
say he was Yogi Bear. He said he was hanging out with Yogi Bear.
Was he still in picnic baskets with him?
Yeah, probably so. He had 8 pounds of meth inside of a spare tire in his vehicle, and he's not at Yellowstone or Jellystone.
Yeah,
for the
he's
time
breaking
being.
stones now. He's in jail breaking stones. Yeah.
There you go.
Leaving those picnic baskets alone.
Right. Okie doke. So that's going to wrap things up for this week. We do want to remind you, though, that if you miss an episode of Calhoun County's Most Wanted and you want to find out who's in the lineup that week, you can go to the Sheriff's Office Facebook page, and we post videos on there with the lineup each week. We also have the property crimes, a separate video for those that you can see. Or you can always go to the TV24 website, tv24.tv, and see the program in its entirety on demand. And you can also find that on YouTube if you look for Calhoun County's Most Wanted channel on YouTube. So however you tune into the program or get that information, we appreciate it, and hope that you'll call in with some information. We'll be looking for you again next week, but hopefully not in the lineup or hanging out with Yogi Bear on Calhoun County's Most Wanted.